It's January 25th, 2024, at Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama. A guard approaches cell 14 in the death house and finds Kenneth Eugene Smith sitting on his bed, hands folded in prayer. It's 6 a.m. Smith has 14 hours left to live. This is his second execution. But how do you kill a man who's already survived his own execution? Not every state in the U.S. allows or uses the death penalty. The ones that do have different execution protocols. But generally speaking, the timeline of events is similar, with slight differences in the details. These protocols can require months of preparation to ensure a seamless execution on the day of implementation. 14 hours from now, one of the most controversial executions in modern U.S. history will take place, leaving witnesses, experts, and the world asking, if the first execution failed, why did we try again? If the United Nations calls it torture, what does that make us? And how can a modern execution be so cruel that it takes 32 minutes for a man to die? November 17th, 2022. The same cell, the same man. Smith was relocated to the death house, strip-searched and strapped to the gurney at 10 p.m. for a lethal injection execution. His death warrant expired at midnight because it took 2 hours just to find a suitable vein. The execution team stabbed Smith with needles for over an hour, collapsing vein after vein. They attempted to insert a central line into his collarbone, a procedure so invasive it left him screaming. At 11:21 p.m., the warden called it off. Smith was unstrapped and returned to his cell. Alabama's third consecutive botched execution in recent years. Smith later described it as torture. I was strapped down for 4 hours while they stuck me over and over. They didn't care. He developed PTSD from the experience, terrified it would happen again. But when Alabama issued a second death warrant 14 months later, they changed their method. This time, they would use nitrogen gas, a technique never attempted on any human in history. Smith would be the world's first. Unlike most states, where the last meal arrives the night before, Alabama serves it hours before execution to prevent a deadly complication. At 8 a.m., guards deliver Smith's request: T-bone steak, hash browns with cheese, scrambled eggs with A1 sauce, and toast. His usual Waffle House order. But there's a problem. If Smith vomits during the execution while wearing a sealed face mask, he could choke to death on his own vomit. The nitrogen would become irrelevant. The meal must be fully digested by execution time. Smith has until 10 a.m. to finish. The clock is ticking differently this time. At 6 a.m., before the meal even arrives, Smith's family enters the visiting room. His wife, Deanna, wears the same shirt she wore during the 2022 attempt. White letters on black fabric, never alone. Reverend Jeff Hood, Smith's spiritual advisor, sits beside him.
Hood is a death penalty abolitionist who has witnessed multiple executions, but nothing like what's coming. They pray together. Smith seems upbeat, even joking with his family.
By 2:45 p.m., the veneer begins to crack. His mother, Linda, age 78, enters the room. She holds his hand through the glass partition. "You were my pride and joy," she tells him, tears streaming down her face. The visitation room fills with family members, sons, cousins, friends, forming a prayer circle despite the separation barriers. At 4:25 p.m., the warden announces 5 minutes remaining. Deanna presses her palm against the glass. Smith mirrors it from his side. Through the barrier, they sign, "I love you," in American Sign Language. The guards place handcuffs on Smith's wrists, the same ones used 14 months ago. Deanna watches him walk away. While Smith said goodbye to his family, the Supreme Court issued its final decision. By a 6-3 vote, Smith's appeal was denied. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote a scathing dissent, calling Smith Alabama's guinea pig and warning that the world is watching what happens next. The United Nations Human Rights Office issued an emergency statement 4 days earlier. UN experts declared that nitrogen gas execution could constitute torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment
under international law. The European Union, Amnesty International, and the Vatican all condemned the execution. But Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall promised the method would be the most painless and humane method of execution known to man.
State officials assured everyone Smith would simply fall asleep. No one had ever tested it on a human to know for certain. Smith won't read the Supreme Court decision. He's already being moved to the execution chamber.
Executions in the United States use 5 legal methods: hanging, electrocution, firing squad, gas chamber, and lethal injection. Nitrogen hypoxia doesn't fit into any of these categories. It's an entirely new invention. Here's how it works. A full-face respirator mask connected to a canister of 100% pure nitrogen gas. When activated, nitrogen floods the mask, completely displacing oxygen. The prisoner breathes normally, but every breath contains zero oxygen, only nitrogen. Under normal circumstances, the human body detects suffocation through carbon dioxide buildup, triggering panic and the desperate sensation of air hunger. But nitrogen comprises 78% of the air we breathe daily, so the body doesn't recognize it as a threat. Alabama officials claim Smith would lose consciousness within seconds, then die peacefully within 5 minutes. That's the theory. The reality had never been tested on humans. Dr. Joel Zivit, an anesthesiologist at Emory University, testified that nitrogen hypoxia isn't even a real medical term. It's a fabrication. There's nitrogen gas, and there's hypoxia, low oxygen. But nitrogen hypoxia is a made-up two-word expression designed to sound legitimate. Medical literature uses the accurate term, nitrogen asphyxiation, oxygen deprivation caused by nitrogen displacement. The only evidence came from animal studies. Researchers observed prolonged suffering, violent convulsions, and what appeared to be extreme distress in test subjects. But the greatest risk was mask leakage. If the seal isn't perfect, oxygen seeps in, not enough to sustain life, but enough to prolong death indefinitely. The prisoner would suffocate in slow motion, unable to breathe, but unable to die. In less than an hour, Smith was about to discover which version was true. 7 p.m. The witnesses arrive. 3 groups file into separate witness rooms at Holman Correctional Facility. Smith's family, including Deanna in her "Never Alone" shirt, sits in one room. The victim's family sits in another room. Between them, media witnesses and prison officials. Dim, salmon-colored lights light the witness room. A box of tissues sits on the windowsill. Through the window, a thick curtain conceals the execution chamber. For now, they see nothing. Behind the curtain, guards are strapping Smith to the gurney. 7:53 p.m. The curtain opens. The curtain slides open. Kenneth Eugene Smith lies on the gurney, arms extended in a crucifixion position, but there are no IV tubes. Instead, a full face mask covers him from forehead to chin, brand name obscured by black tape. The mask is enormous, bulky and industrial, like something from a chemical disaster scene. A thick hose connects it to a canister of nitrogen mounted on the wall. An electrocardiogram monitor beeps steadily, displaying Smith's elevated heart rate. On the opposite wall, the telephone. Smith turns his head and sees Deanna through the glass. Despite the mask covering half his face, despite the straps pinning his arms, he smiles, ear to ear. His fingers form the sign language gesture for "I love you" against the leather restraints. Deanna's "Never Alone" shirt reflects in the glass separating them. 7:55 p.m., last chance. Smith stares at the telephone on the wall. At any moment, the governor could call, granting a stay of execution, pausing this experiment, acknowledging the international condemnation. One phone call could stop this. The telephone is silent. The warden looks at his watch. He removes his glasses and gives a slight nod to the execution team. It's 7:57 p.m. The nitrogen begins flowing. 7:57 p.m. The execution. For the first 30 seconds, nothing visible happens. Smith breathes normally through the mask. The electrocardiogram continues its steady rhythm. Witnesses lean forward, unsure what they're supposed to see. Then Smith's body jerks violently. His entire frame thrashes against the restraints, back arching off the gurney. His head whips side to side. The movement isn't subtle, it's aggressive, primal. Witnesses in the victim's family gasp. Deanna begins sobbing. 7:59 p.m. Smith's body continues convulsing. Witnesses report seeing retching motions inside the mask, as if he's trying to vomit. The violent jerking doesn't stop. This is not unconsciousness. This is not peaceful. 8 p.m. 3 minutes of gas flow. Smith's body lifts against the restraints with each heaving breath. A correctional officer steps forward, leans over Smith, and looks directly into the mask, checking something. The officer returns to his position without speaking. Alabama officials claim Smith would be unconscious within seconds. It's been 3 minutes. He's still moving. 8:02 p.m. 5 minutes. Smith's movements begin to slow. His body still jerks, but the intervals lengthen. The thrashing becomes sporadic twitching. 8:05 p.m. His hand, which earlier signed, "I love you," curls into a fist. 8:07 p.m. 10 minutes since the gas began flowing. Smith takes his last visible breath. His chest stops moving. The electrocardiogram shows erratic patterns, then begins to slow. The witness room is completely silent, except for Deanna's muffled sobs. 8:15 p.m. 18 minutes since nitrogen flow began. Smith has been motionless for 8 minutes. Medical personnel enter the chamber to check vital signs. 8:25 p.m. The warden pronounces Kenneth Eugene Smith deceased. Total time from curtain opening to death pronouncement, 32 minutes. The curtain closes. Alabama officials released a statement claiming Smith held his breath for approximately 4 minutes, causing the violent reaction witnesses observed. That's why it looked like torture. Smith made it worse for himself by resisting. The autopsy told a different story. Smith's blood was dark maroon instead of bright red, a sign of severe oxygen deprivation. His lungs contained significant fluid buildup. His trachea was filled with frothy fluid, consistent with pulmonary edema, meaning drowning in your own bodily fluids. Medical experts reviewing the autopsy concluded Smith experienced air hunger, the desperate panic of suffocation, exactly as UN experts warned. The thrashing wasn't resistance. It was an involuntary physiological response to asphyxiation. Dr. Joel Zivit stated that future nitrogen executions should include sedation first to prevent the suffering witnesses observed in Smith's case. Alabama scheduled more nitrogen executions anyway. Oklahoma and Mississippi approved the method for their states. Smith was the experiment. There will be others. Kenneth Eugene Smith became the first person in human history executed by nitrogen gas on January 25th, 2024. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. We release multiple videos every month.